Chapter 13. Selah in Sepia Tones. It was the last Friday in June when Kenia finished collecting quantitative data on enough randomized homes breaking the 50 mark and shifted to collecting qualitative data through in-depth interviews. Diving into her work had provided a welcome, immersive distraction. After long days of riding Kermit, conducting surveys, and collecting data, she was exhausted each night, falling into deep, dreamless slumbers. She had been untroubled by dreams, hallucinations, and fugue states, and was ready to chalk it all up to the fatigue and stress from her arrival. The first respondent in her list was Martha Anderson. The home was in an area Kenia already knew. Just a 10-minute ride across town over the bridge to Maryland and up State Road 521. It was an area of less blight, with some scenic views of the valley from the tree breaks. She packed a lunch and planned to find a peaceful overlook to set herself down, review her notes, and eat post-interview. The turnoff was marked by a mailbox with a patina of green lichens growing on it. It was missing the number 6 in 106, but she knew she had the right address from the other mailboxes along the road. She rolled down the driveway at a slow 5 to 7 miles per hour. Many of the homes could be set far back in the woods. The farther back, the more likely they were used as meth labs. But she was pleasantly surprised to see this home come into view after only riding a few yards. The garage was derelict, leaning off-center. The yard was given over to leaves and deadfall, and one of the trash cans was on its side. Crows picking at the remnants stuck to fast food containers. A Dodge minivan with an apparatus for a wheelchair was parked in the driveway. Folks running a meth lab would not be receiving disability checks, she reassured herself. On the other hand, she remembered a story Thea had told her the week before of a son who had buried his mother in the backyard while collecting her welfare and disability checks for 2.5 years before he was caught. A dog barked as she approached the front door. She knocked. She waited a long while for the door to open. The woman who stood on the other side was her own height, but easily 200 pounds heavier than Kenia. She had deep folds of skin on her neck and a sallow complexion that betrayed long years of tobacco use. Her eyes looked drowsy, the rims red, the skin around them gray, and the whites jaundiced. She was breathing heavily, as if the walk to the door had taxed her. Her hair was a greasy blonde with exposed gray roots. "Good morning. Are you Miss Anderson?" Yes, I am," she said, friendly enough. "I am Kenia Desi, a student intern from the MedDent building downtown. You might have received a phone call or a questionnaire in the mail describing a study." "Oh, yes, Miss Jolene from downtown called me," Martha said, her voice hearty over her panting. She said you would be coming up. Come in." Kenia made note that, for once, Jolene had done something to help her. Since returning from her conference, her attitude towards Kenia could have been categorized as benign neglect, Thea having been the one to provide her with the guidance and support. Kenia didn't mind. Martha swung the door open. The dog, a gray-brown mutt, wagged its tail and sniffed her. "That's Mocha. Don't mind him. He's friendly, likes visitors," Martha said. The house was cluttered, the air stale with the scent of cigarettes, litter boxes, and the smoke from burners on the stove, which were in need of a good scrubbing. The television was blaring the History Channel as a baritone voiceover narrated black and white footage from World War II. The audience consisted of a young man in his 20s wearing jean shorts and a gray hoodie. He was sunk in a leather recliner and made no effort to rise and greet Kenia, nor to hide the bottle of Smirnoff tucked between his thigh and the arm of the chair. Martha sat herself down on an adjacent recliner, the cushion beneath her worn into a deep groove from frequent use. She gestured to a couch across from them where the dog, Mocha, was already sitting, his tail swishing back and forth. Kenya sat down next to Mocha, a cloud of dog and cat hair erupting as she did so. Mocha pressed his nose to her hands and licked her. A cat reclined on the top of the entertainment center, watching with narrowed eyes. Another sat upright on the back of the couch, as if ready to leap to safety if Kenya's next move made it necessary. "That is Tom, and the other cat is also named Tom. This is my son Joel." Joel lifted the bottle of Smirnoff in a sort of half-toast, half-salute. "I'm gonna detox tomorrow morning." "Okay, then," Kenya said, careful to pick what she hoped were the right words. "Joel, this is Kenia." "Close enough." "Miss Anderson, I'm here to ask you a few questions about an app we're developing to help households make—" She hesitated at the phrase, "healthier choices," choosing instead to say, "more informed choices about their—" She hesitated again at the word diet and instead chose grocery shopping. She pulled out her tablet and stylus and got ready to take notes. "You can write on that?" Martha asked. "Yes," Kenya said, opening a file on Martha. "It's called technology, Mom," Joel said. "Joel, can you turn down the TV?" If he heard her, he ignored her. Kenya began with the warm-up questions, moving from close-ended to open. How long had she lived in Selah Station? All her 57 years. What changes had she seen in that time? "Oh, many. I grew up here and we lived closer to town. My father was a photographer for the Picayune. Things were different then. People still had jobs. Families were intact. Folks still had pride in this place, black and white. We had more folks like you." "Black?" "Yep. Most migrated out, though. After the island was quarantined and the university closed, Selah is not diverse like it once was." She said with an audible sigh. "I've heard that from others." "Now it just seems everyone is white and on welfare or disability or both. And that, well, it's sad. When I was growing up, people could look after themselves. It was just a given that you would repair a car, patch a roof, hunt, or grow your own food. You fixed your own pipes, mowed your own lawn, chopped your own firewood for the winter, or shoveled your own coal." "And where do you go to buy your groceries?" "Well, there is a mart downtown off Main. That's about it. There's some selection at the Gas and Go, but when we're going to stock up, we drive over to Martinsburg." Kenya made further notes, confirming Selah Station's status as a food desert, and inquired about the time to drive to Martinsburg. 45 minutes, Martha said. "One way. We go 2 or 3 times a year." Martha cut herself off and leaned forward, rocking herself into a standing position. The seat cushion hissed as air seeped back into it. "Let me get you some coffee. Do you take cream or sugar?" "Neither, thanks." Kenya waited, her hands wrapping around the edges of the tablet, while the television narrator described the heroics of bands of Marines on Iwo Jima in towns breathless with import and patriotic reverence. Kenya stared down at her notes, tapping the screen with the stylus. "I bet you think we're pretty primitive out here," Joel said over the television. No, not really." "Come on, it's clear as day what Hollywood thinks of us out here in the country. Look at how we're portrayed on South Park or Parks and Recreation. Folks think we're flyover country, just like the backward folks in Deliverance. That sure is a nice tablet you got there." Kenya swallowed and wished she could turn her wrist away to hide her tech. "Your flat screen is nice. It's bigger than the one in my dorm." Joel snorted. Your dorm? At college? Which one? Kenya looked at her feet for a moment before she replied, Georgetown? Georgetown. That's about 60,000 a year, right? Something like that. But a lot of people are on financial aid. She was stuck, afraid to ask if he went to college or wanted to. His resentment was palpable. You, really headed to rehab tomorrow? That's a big step. He glared at her in silence, blinking as if trying to focus. He ignored her question. So many sophisticated folks in the city look down on us out here. You know, it's not a red state, blue state thing as much as an urban rural thing. Kenya looked over her shoulder to the kitchen where Martha had disappeared to. She could hear dishes and cupboards, but did not see any sign of Martha's immediate return. She patted Mocha on the head. He's a sweet dog. You're ignoring me. Now, Kenya felt a flash of anger and changed tack. No, actually, I'm not. I'm a guest in your home, and I'm choosing to be polite. I try not to talk politics while on an interview anyway. You don't, but what are all these questions about health and shopping? It's all about socio-economic status. It's about the distribution of resources and services, and what is politics if not that? You have a point, Joel. You think most people in the city know where their food is grown, where the coal and natural gas comes from, where their trash goes, or where their monitor with all its cancer-inducing rare earth elements goes when they are finished with it and want to buy the next version that Apple tells them to? She remembered her environmental health class lectures, where the same topics came up, although she knew for a fact that most electronic waste ended up in third world dumps where underage children hammered it to pieces to salvage the parts, without protection from the toxins released into their bodies and into the environment. She had seen such places on the outskirts of Lagos, but she chose not to argue the point. No, most people don't know where these things come from or go. You know, the recovery after 2008, it came mainly to the cities. Out here, we're still getting pummeled. No jobs, no new businesses. Did you know the suicide rate here is 5 times what it is in the city? I did, actually. It's my job to know. It's my job, she says. He mocked. We're just statistics to you, aren't we? He took a pull from his Smirnoff bottle. Kenya turned to the kitchen. The movement startled Tom, the cat, from his perch on the back of the couch. Maybe I'll go in and help your mother. Funeral homes are the only growth industry here in Selah, you know. That and army recruiters. Then why haven't you gotten a job there? She snapped, surprising herself. Why don't you move to the city? He snorted. Oh, there is this wall that surrounds your cities called the cost of living. It's like a system for keeping poor folks like us out. Are you really going to claim systematic institutional discrimination? She said, indignant. She could not help the incredulous laugh building in her and thought she would regret. I think I'm going to go see what your mother is doing. Jim Crow has been over for more than 50 years, Joel said. She stopped, halfway to the door to the kitchen, and turned, knowing she could not let his comment go unanswered, even if she knew he had said it just to provoke her. Sure, and the war on drugs and mass incarceration has done its best to take its place. She cocked her head, deciding to take the plunge and engage Joel. Funny how there is so much talk about the opioid epidemic here in your flyover states, where you are fortunate it's treated as a health problem, whereas in urban neighborhoods, it's a criminal problem that has led to more blacks being under the control of the penal system than were ever enslaved in this country. I've heard that statistic. It's been debunked. By which reputable news outlet? Breitbart? Your people are always playing victim. Kenya felt the blood rush to her face. And your people are always getting played by the rich. They've been pitting poor whites against poor blacks for 400 years. That game has been around longer in your America than democracy. Seems like they can always count on the bigotry and inferiority complexes of poor white folks to do their dirty work, who've been too brainwashed by closed fundamentalist religious revivals to adopt any type of critical thinking. Joel took a pull of his Smirnoff, staring at her over the length of his bottle. He lowered it, took a gasp of air, and said, "And you and your liberal friends gave up on us, didn't you? We're irredeemable, with the original sin of being white, aren't we? In a country you think is irredeemable too. That you'd rather tear down than build up. Talk about extreme. You talk about fundamentalists, closed thinking. Those students on college campuses seem pretty zealous and closed-minded to me, shutting out speakers they don't like, falling over one another to assert who has the most righteous claim to an oppressed identity. It's sanctimony on the highest level, a competition all its own, an obsession with liberal purity. Do they have any practical solutions, or just disgust for anyone with a modicum of privilege?" "You seem to be a very angry man," was all Kenya could manage to offer in reply. "I'll say," he said, taking another swig from the bottle, "Donald Trump was our trash can through your skyscraper luxury apartment window. He's our Watts riot, a wake-up call to all the elitists who have forgotten us. Let me guess, you're not racist, but you don't think Obama cared about you? That he just didn't get you?" "You know, I voted for Obama." "So that makes you enlightened?" "No, but it proves I'm not racist." "But you voted for Trump, proudly." "I don't know. Seems like the very definition of racism to me." "Come again? How do you see that?" "Think about how exceptional President Obama had to be to get elected. His education at elite institutions, his perfect family, his scandal-free career as a politician, a best-selling author who wrote his own books. All Trump had to be was rich and white, and he could still get away with being racist, assaulting women, mocking the disabled, being a traitor and a crook, and he still got your vote." "Trump is a jerk. We know it. But we'd rather have him on our side. A rich billionaire with a big mouth. If you put him in a Marvel movie and put him in an iron suit, he could be a hero." She pictured Colton and his Iron Man figurine. "I guess I'm grateful that Captain America kicked Tony Stark's rich ass in Civil War then," she said, surprising herself that Marvel would inform the retort she would reach for. Chiasm would have been proud, even if she wasn't. She got up and walked to the kitchen. She had nothing left to say. Kenya found Martha in the kitchen. She was ready to explain that she had to go. But before she could open her mouth, she saw Martha working her way across the kitchen, over the peeling linoleum floor to the table where she had set up a chipped coffee and tea set. Martha rubbed at a stain on the table, then another, her face flushed, either with embarrassment or effort. Despite her present state of fury, Kenya felt a wave of pity for the woman, who made apologies for the state of the kitchen, but had clearly taken pains to prepare a welcome. Kenya took a deep breath, centering herself, trying to reset her emotions and be grateful. "So nice to have company. I'm sorry the place is such a mess," Martha said, setting out 2 mugs. "Please, sit down." Kenya did so. Martha followed, grimacing as she squeezed into the chair. Kenya experiencing another stab of pity for the shame she could read on Martha's face for not fitting into her own furniture, for living with the bitter pill of her son, and not being able to offer him a future outside of Selah Station. Kenya thanked her for the coffee, then asked if Martha had a cell phone. "Yes, I do," she said, drawing out a clamshell flip phone. Kenya stared. Oh, the app we're piloting is for smartphones. The app? A program, Kenya said, seized with her own growing sense of shame that she truly had nothing to offer this woman for her time. She was simply taking her data, reducing her to a number, when it was clear that Martha just wanted to have coffee and be treated like a human. Kenya decided to go off script from the question she was scripted to ask for the interview. She pulled out her own phone and tapped the Healthy Bites icon. See, you use this app with a camera feature on your smartphone and scan the UPC codes on the items in your pantry. Oh, there's a camera on there? Yes, Kenya said. Pushing through with her explanation, she stepped over to the pantry where the folding doors were open. She started to scan items. The usual offenders were all present: chips, packages of cookies, cupcakes, soda, sugary cereals, artificial sweeteners, bagels. She asked if she could go into the fridge, pausing for Martha to consent before she opened the door and scanned the ground beef, hamburger patties, processed cheeses, frozen pizzas, and tubs of ice cream. When she finished, she sat back down at the table and let the app process the data, the hourglass icon spinning while she took in the rest of the kitchen. The dishes were piled in the sink, which Kenya surmised was the source of the foul odor. Nothing was new. The only exception was the Sports Illustrated swimsuit calendar. Its glossy pages hung in a prominent position over the kitchen table. An impossibly curvy, olive-skinned woman in a bikini that seemed made of string and tissue paper was stepping out of the surf on a tropical beach. The tresses of her auburn hair kissed by the sun, the toned muscles of her legs glittering with a sprinkling of white sand. Her lips were full and parted, her eyes staring deeply into the camera. Notions of patriarchy, the male gaze, and the objectification of women floated to mind from Kenya's class the previous semester in women's studies. She felt a new surge of dislike for Joel as he sat stewing in the next room. She was rescued from her thoughts by the app, which beeped, announcing that its calculations were complete. All right, it has now estimated what it will cost to choose healthier alternatives and listed where you can buy them, factoring in costs to drive to the nearest stores. Well, I'll be, Martha said, astounded. The answers came up on the screen with links to maps to stores with healthy selections, the nearest being 60 miles away. Kenya scrolled past them and instead looked at the budget results. Looks like you could shift to a healthier grocery list for just $4.75 more per day. That's not bad. No, Kenya said, working out the yearly budget, grimacing when she came to the result. Oh, was all she could say. What's wrong? Well, it comes to $1,733.75 more per year. Martha let out a hearty laugh. Well, we can't afford that. Not with my disability and Joel's unemployment checks. No, you can't, Kenya said, crestfallen. What am I doing here? She swiped the screen closed in a hurry, as if she had stumbled across a porn site. It suddenly did seem absurd to the point of obscene. Martha could see it in her face. You're a sweet young lady. Your heart is in the right place. But I don't know what an app will really do here. Martha laughed again, her voice going soft, shifting into some maternal mode. Wait here a moment, she said, before using the end of the table to lift herself up. She went into the next room and returned with an ancient photo album, the vinyl cover peeling. It creaked as she opened it and began to flip through the pages. In sepia-stained black and white photos, Kenya saw a town she knew and didn't. It was Selah Station, mid-century, without the boarded-up businesses, abandoned college buildings, and burnt-out factory ruins. The Selah Station she had seen in her visions. This was the place I grew up, Martha said. These are my pop's photos. You always hear folks going on about the good old days. Those of us who remember old Selah, we know the good old days were not good for all. We know that this country was founded on genocide and slavery. America has not always lived up to its ideals. Sounds familiar. Kenya watched the pictures of people at lunch counters and drive-ins pass by. Girls wore pleated skirts, oxfords, and blouses without frills, identical to the young women she had seen walking down the street to the movie theater. Here, as then, the groups of people were mixed, black, brown, white, and every shade in between. But Selah, it always seemed was different. We sort of felt like we were living up to those ideals better than other places. It was not a bad way of life, Martha said. Yeah, it seems like it was a real loss. It was. Martha slowed towards the back of the album. Here are the pictures my father took the day of the blast, at the celebration just a few hours before. Celebration? The welcome home. Sebastian Anderson. Kenya realized with a start that she had seen Martha's father. He was the Picayune photographer who had... Can you scan the photos more closely now? They were well framed, each with good contrast and focus. She did not see the picture of the prankster in the spacesuit. Out of focus and blurry, Sebastian likely had decided not to include it in his personal album. Her eyes did fall and remain on one photo taken at night that seemed to show a hazy image of a tanker truck barreling around a corner, tipped on its wheels as it took a turn at a reckless speed. The driver was engaged in what looked like a struggle with a white man hanging on to the outside by the side view mirror. Kenya blinked and the photo was gone, replaced by children playing in water spouting from a fire hydrant on a hot day. Wait, she asked Martha, can you flip back? Martha did so, and did again. Kenya could not find the photo of the truck again. So strange, she said. What is that? Oh, nothing, Kenya said, a sinking feeling she had not felt in weeks returning. Martha continued to the end of the album. The last photos were of the long lines of cars on the traffic bridge over the river gorges. As families evacuated, black and white children leaned out the windows, some even in the same cars together, looking back at the smoke clouds rising from the north ends of the island. The prevailing winds pushing the fallout in slanting shafts over the neighborhoods and homes they would never be able to return to. Martha closed the album. Happier times then, but we can't forget. That would mean giving up on the future. Yeah, Kenya said, not sure at all what Martha meant.